Whoa.
Hello and welcome to Project Eradication Reads Code Lyoko Chronicles, the visual audiobook, starring Flower Fox as everyone.
Literally everyone. All the voices
Even the
me.
narrator. She's the narrator too. I don't know how she does it. Fucking amazing.
Everyone is here and everyone is Flower Fox.
It's like Code Lyoko. It's like Smash Ultimate, but Code Lyoko, and all the characters are the same person.
Yes. So basically, like Code Lyoko, all the characters are one person.
Yes. now I'm tempted to just dub like an episode, like an actual episode from the show from all
You
the voices I've
should.
come up
You've
with.
already
Do it.
you've already done all the scripts. You
Do-
might as well.
Do
I
it.
mean, I've highlighted the
Do
script.
common interest. Do common interest.
I
Yes.
don't have a good Peter Duncan voice though.
Peter Duncan
That's
doesn't
one of the
say
characters that done-
anything. Oh, I guess he does.
He says a
No,
couple
he
things.
wants and
No, he
Oh,
says,
no,
I
he
don't
does.
speak to cops.
beginning.
That's right. I don't talk to
And
cops.
Xana Duncan has a few lines too. Not many, but oh, you found something crazy
What
about
did you
CL
find,
recently?
Gadget? Is it an episode where the elevator door is consistently correct?
Whoa. There's no way something like that is actually real.
You guys and Peter Duncan, OMG. Is that your revelation, or are you gonna tell us your revelation? Waiting for a response. How are you doing, Dark Xana? I haven't seen you in my personal streams. I was curious why you hadn't shown up to belittle me.
He's calling you out.
I think we're aware of that. Do you have the name of it, Gadget? Hi, Nick. Glad to see you again today.
Canceled PSP game. I don't think I actually know about that. Or maybe I do. I don't know. Is this recent information or is it old?
I think it's old. I think we've talked about it before. There were a couple
Wait.
games that got canceled. I know they were gonna
Yeah.
Wait, Dark Xana,
Quest
are
for
you talking? Are you talking when we play it, or would you be the volume of the recording? Recording of what?
Oh, he's talking about the recording. It's because the volume of the video that I send you.
Oh.
Oh,
I
who's
see.
that? I know it's quiet.
Yeah, I know.
I've been living it, but
well, let me put it this way. Battleship guns are very loud, and I use OBS to record World of Warships, so I have to turn the gain down on it.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. I noticed when I recorded these first few chapters, for some reason PDF decided to shift its view, and I didn't catch it until a couple chapters later. So some of the pages, like you can still read it, it's fine, but it's a little shifted. Like you can see the gray in the left
I think
from the PDF.
Why isn't unloud a word? It sounds like it should be, doesn't it? Unloud.
Unloud?
Yeah, like sort of just like the like yeah, it sounds dumb, but it also sounds like it should be a word because English is just dumb.
I mean, yes, but also no.
Everyone is gangster until Code Lyoko isn't there when you call. Brilliant.
Right.
Damn.
Brilliant.
Oh,
What flower?
Holyoke Virtualized. Just because I saw the gadget set that. Isn't that? I thought that was the name of the MO.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
that's our in joke of like the series, a CL reboot that's like
Teen Titans Go. Yes, that's right.
I thought for a second
ours is Get Ready to Virtualize, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, Get Ready to
The DS.
Virtualize is the DS game.
I'm drunk. Ignore me. I'm gonna go cry in a corner now.
You should.
And just so you guys are wondering, if you're
it has
wondering,
been a really hard week, Wazy. I do not appreciate your sarcasm.
Nah, I will continue to be sarcastic.
And I highly doubt you'll enjoy my creepiness.
Nobody enjoys your creepiness.
Uh-oh.
Except like-minded individuals, but I'm yet to find one of them.
Yeah, I mean, even Florida Man was horrified, so, you know.
Yes, but we don't talk
Are
about
you
Florida
talking
Man.
about the MMO?
Wait, what? Okay.
Oh, that's
Gadget, are you?
PSP, because PlayStation Portable had Wi-Fi
Yeah, I
capability.
know.
This is the MMO.
I know not the MMO, but I'm just like, I don't know about a canceled game for PSP. Unless you mean Quest for Infinity came out for the PSP, so like it actually was on the PSP.
Do you have a link?
Wow, Google is the most useless thing in the universe sometimes.
I mean, yeah.
Ah, shiz. Paradox
Oh.
is here. We are live, Paradox. Just so you're aware.
Yeah.
What are we watching?
Oh, I should probably screen share that now, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I couldn't see
Yeah.
anything. I thought there was something wrong.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Oh, okay. I'll go ahead and go then.
And what the heck? Like you just.
Oh.
Cam just realized
Let's
it's stream day.
Yeah.
Hey, no giant forehead. See, that's how you do it.
I mean, it's a very different style from CL.
Still better art style than the stuff we saw in Evolution.
I feel like
What do
this
you
is a
mean,
mix
art style?
between like the original and Evolution. I mean, it's got this very Harry Potter illustrated-esque style, but I kind of like it.
Likewise, it actually it at least tries to stay unique somewhat.
No, I can dig it. My problem is Ailita's
Yeah.
hair is pink in all of the cover art, but it's red,
is red
in the book.
story for some stupid reason.
No, they're trying to make it realistic. So
Even though it's fucking cherry red, not like that like orangey blonde kind of red that most redheads are.
This is why I just go and say blue, green, orange, and the like are all natural hair colors in that universe.
I was gonna say, I mean, there was that one girl in Evolution with like really blue hair in that one scene.
yeah.
Yeah, at least Evolution doesn't try to pawn off that, no, Aelita had red hair this entire time. Pink was only her virtual form. I mean, yeah, they changed odds, but I really feel like that was more to like
What do you mean
cut
change?
down costs.
Oh, Odd's like a dirty blonde in Evolution, isn't he?
I still think it would be
Yeah.
more hilarious if his natural hair color was all purple and the blonde was the dye.
That's actually great.
I mean,
love
it's
that.
entirely possible, and we just don't know.
His mom's hair is completely purple, so, and I assume that. Yeah, honestly, it could be.
Originally, I didn't like the idea of Odd's hair being purple, but I've actually warmed up to that idea now that I've spent some time thinking about it.
Yeah, I feel
So
that.
who's the warrior with naturally blue hair, but dyed a color?
William.
Mm.
Yeah, William.
You know, I can see that. I mean, it's a bit weird, unless the CL universe is just like, yeah,
Maybe dark
people
blue.
with
William had dark blue hair.
His mom's hair is blue.
I can't.
Mom's hair.
I couldn't roll with like bright blue hair on William. It just
I prefer the more dark blue hair.
I could
like
vibe with
steel
dark
dark
blue,
blue, like so dark it looks black, but it's actually a subtle shade of blue.
Blue steel or navy blue.
Yeah.
Kind of like how Sasuke's hair was colored in the Naruto anime.
Sasuke!
Huh?
Okay, let's get on with the session. So everybody mute up, and if you unmute, I will murder you in your sleep. That's not a promise. That's not a threat. It's a promise.
The Army of Nothing. Translated from French by Kelsey and a Queen of Fairies. for Kodlyoko.fr. Proofreading by Aquina Ferries and Kelsey. Images and formatting by Aquaticklefik. Tonight it will be 10 years since I first met her, and I've decided the time has come to tell our story, to reveal the incredible facts that we witnessed together. Yumi Ishiyama, Ulrich Stern, Odd de la Robia, and myself, Jeremy Belpois. And Alita, naturally. Not one day has passed when I've not thought of you, Alita. This history is for all of my friends, but it is above all else for you, Alita. Goodness knows if you're still listening. Jeremy. Prologue. Nocturnal Meeting. Grigory Nictopoulos was visibly nervous. It was an unusual sensation for him, and that made him even more nervous. It was nighttime, and the man was silently waiting on the border between Caddick Academy and the garden of the house that had once belonged to Professor Hopper, the Hermitage. Behind him was a barrier of planks separating the park from the garden. In front of Grigory, a veritable jungle of trees so tall that they seemed to claw at the sky with their branches, hiding the school buildings from his sight. The man sighed. Beneath his right armpit he could clearly feel the weight of his gun, a large desert eagle so powerful it could take down a rhinoceros with a single bullet. He carried his hunting knife and 4 hand grenades attached to his belt, while the cartridge belt of a machine gun sat diagonally across his chest. He was armed enough to take on an army, but this night he wasn't awaiting any ordinary army. Grigory listened intently. From the school hidden behind the curtain of vegetation came the sounds of battle, shouting, and the explosions of many windows being shattered to smithereens. He increased his grip on the leash he held in his left hand, and observed the 2 dogs lying by his feet, Hannibal and Scipio, his enormous Rottweilers, muscular, heavy beasts with bad tempers who he had personally raised to become wild combat animals. But they were both now lying on the ground, close together and with their muzzles resting between their front legs. They were very scared. All of a sudden, the dogs leapt up, turned their mouths towards the scrub, and began to make a hoarse growl in unison. Grigory drew the leash back to keep them at bay. After several moments, he started to hear something. It was a deep sound, like metal moving through mud, heavy steps made by something inhuman that was advancing towards them from between the trees. The man placed a hand on the butt of his gun, better to be safe than sorry. Finally, the first soldier arrived from beneath the trees. It was easily 2 meters tall, and as solid and imposing as an armoire that had been lifting weights at the gym. It wore shiny bronze armor, and its face was a blank, dark metal mask with a series of yellow lights that glowed and dimmed at regular intervals. From its head came a waterfall of black cables that ended in electrical plugs. Hannibal and Scipio both let out a few barks and jumped behind Grigory with a single bound, pressing themselves against his legs. Grigory didn't want to show his fear in front of the scary being, and so he cleared his throat before speaking to it in the driest way he could manage. "Did you bring what we asked for?" was all he could say. The soldier gave no sign of having heard him and simply passed by him, moving through the barrier towards the Hermitage. The man realized that the creature's steps seemed less sure and shakier, and its armor was even less shiny than usual. It seemed to be becoming translucent, like a ghost. More soldiers exited the trees. They marched in double file, and only the row of small yellow lights across their helmets animated their inexpressive faces. Some of them were as solid and compact as mountains, while others seemed intangible. Grigory noticed that their breastplates were covered in strange chemical substances, and their imposing armor had some holes here and there. The battle must have been harder than initially expected. One of the soldiers approached Grigory and held out its hand, offering him a palm computer not much larger than a regular mobile phone. Its screen was lit up. "Thank you," said Grigory, taking the device. Without response, the soldier reunited with its peers and continued its march towards the Hermitage's basement. There, the scanner column would swallow them up, making them disappear forever. Grigory now felt calmer. Once their mission was complete, the soldiers created by Xana would auto-destruct, just like they had planned. He tugged on Hannibal and Scipio's leashes to convince them to get up, and walked through the barrier with them, entering the Hermitage's backyard. The house was a narrow 3-story construction, with a gable roof. On its left, a garage with a flat roof sat against one of the side walls. The sliding door was open, and the creatures marched in this direction to access the basement. Grigory turned to 2 human soldiers who had frozen at the abnormal sight of the robot parade and let out a crazed, hoarse laugh. "Don't worry, children," he said in a mocking tone. "Those boogeymen won't hurt you. Haven't you seen their armor? They're becoming transparent." One of the soldiers tried to babble something in response, but Grigory shrugged. "Once they've come through," he ordered them, "immediately close the barrier. And don't forget to warn me if anything weird happens." This said, the man and his 2 dogs walked around the side of the house. The pickup was parked on the road, outside the front door. It was red and seemed rather beaten up, but beneath the rickety facade hid a veritable race car. Grigory had tuned the motor himself. The man climbed in and sat Hannibal and Scipio on the ample back seat. He then sat in the driver's seat, breathing heavily as he took the palm computer the soldier had delivered to him. He observed the incalculable mass of numbers and other characters that shone against the black screen. Gregory didn't understand one iota of it all, but he did recognize one word that flashed in the upper left part of the mishmash: Aelita, the name of Hopper's daughter. It remained to be seen why Hannibal Mago was so interested in this thing. Gregory hadn't the slightest idea, but during the many years he'd spent working for the man, he had learned one thing. It's better to ask few questions, keep your eyes open, and always have a way out. He took out a flash drive from the glove box and connected it to the palm computer, registering a copy of the device contents. It was a mere precaution. Maybe, on the day when he least expects it, Mago will turn his back on him and this data, whatever it may be, will be more useful to him. Gregory turned and distractedly stroked his two dogs. "Come on, my pretties," he whispered to them. "Best not to keep Mago waiting." Chapter 1. The morning after the battle. Eva Skinner felt very lucky. Firstly, she looked truly sensational. The fuchsia makeup on her eyelids went perfectly with her blue eyes, and the shine in her lips made her small mouth look like a heart. She wore a splendid fluorescent green jacket and boots that couldn't be any more fashionable. Oh, if only her friends could see her now! In front of her was a small crystal lake surrounded by a small wood of glass trees. One of the trees stretched and bent like a willow, and from its branches ran drops of water in all the colors of the rainbow, raining on the surface of the lake like an ethereal waterfall. Eva was in a park, the park of a marvelous and deserted city, of which she was the one and only queen. What more could she ask for? Well, of course, not everything was perfect. Starting with the strange boys she had met here. The first, who says his name is Ulrich, was a cute and athletic boy, but he was dressed in a very tragic way, like a samurai, with his traditional sword attached to his belt. The other was even worse. He was called Jeremy, and he wore a pair of very large and round glasses, had very pointy ears, wore horrible green tights, and seemed like the ugly cousin of an elf. Eva couldn't remember how on earth she had agreed to go walking with guys like that. She was a girl of certain social standing, and, without a doubt, the prettiest girl at her school. She turned around. Jeremy and Ulrich were seated cross-legged on the bank of the small lake, and were talking to one another animatedly. They spoke in French. Although she considered speaking French a very chic thing to do, Eva had never found the time to study it. However, to her enormous surprise, she could now understand everything. It was as if a part of her brain was automatically translating their words into English, and in truth, that is very strange. Eva shrugged before approaching the two boys. There was nobody in this city apart from the three of them, so she would be better off getting along with them. Jeremy, Ulrich, and Eva were in the park of the first city, and it had been several hours since they had heard news from the outside world. Jeremy had tried to explain to Eva why she was here, including the story about Xana and everything else, but the girl seemed more interested in her clothes than his words, and so he had given up after a short while. He had more urgent matters to think about. They had to find a way to get out of the first city and rematerialize in the first world. "What do you think's going on out there?" Ulrich asked him, a worried expression on his face. Yumi was still in reality, where Xana had sent an army of monstrous creatures. "I'm sure that Yumi and Odd were managing on their own," Jeremy said, trying to smile. "Richard and Professor Hertz are with them, not to mention the principal and our parents, and I believe Alita is safe and sound in the mirror. Her father's journal is a tranquil place with no dangers." "You're forgetting about Xana," Ulrich pointed out. "Xana's with her." Jeremy felt a shiver raise up his spine. That was the thought he had been trying his best to avoid. "Xana is here too, with us," he responded. "He has already retaken his place as the absolute master of Lyoko in the Far City, and even so, he hasn't attacked us yet." "So?" exclaimed Ulrich. "Why, we stay here and wait? But sooner or later, he might set his monsters loose to tear us to pieces, and then—" Jeremy clicked his fingers, his face brightening with joy. "You're right!" he exclaimed. "Right? About what?" asked Ulrich, staring at him in confusion. "About Xana's monsters. If we provoke them and they attack us, we'll lose our life points and—" "Huh? But have you gone crazy? Don't you remember our battles on Lyoko? Without life points, the game is over, we go back to reality. We'll materialize in the factory scanners and we'll be safe again." "The factory's infested with the Green Phoenix terrorists," Ulrich responded, unconvinced. "How on earth are we going to get out of there?" "I don't know," admitted Jeremy, "but there's always a way to get out of something like this, right?" He realized that Eva had stopped looking in the mirror created by the pure water in the lake. The girl returned to them and smiled. "Instead of staying here and arguing, why don't you accompany me on a tour? I'd like to explore this fantastic place." Eva had just spoken in French, though with a very strong American accent. Jeremy told himself that this girl may be brighter than she appeared. Odd de la Robbia awoke feeling as cold as ice and with the sensation of having bruises on every square centimeter of his skin. At first he had thought that sleeping on the science laboratory floor would have been fun, but he hadn't taken the hard tile floor into account. What's more, it was incredibly cold. The previous night, Odd had been forced to cut the power to all the school buildings to stop their enemies from recharging their batteries. It had been a smart idea, because it had saved them all, but it had also disabled the thermostat now the boiler was inactive. Odd poked his head out of his sleeping bag. The morning light had begun to filter through the large laboratory windows. There was a jumble of desks, tables, and microscopes lined up along the walls, while in the middle area, which had been completely cleared out of furniture and apparatus, in the faint light Odd could see the silhouettes of Caddick students, sleeping in their bags, over which they had thrown quilts and blankets they had found around the school. The principal was there too, as well as the teachers and a few parents, Ulrich and Jeremy's fathers, or Yumi's parents and his own, Robert and Margaret de la Robbia. All together like a family on a camping trip, except they weren't out camping, they were at war. Yumi, whose sleek black hair was spread all over the pillow, was still asleep beside him. She must have been exhausted. During the battle that night she had fought like a true warrior. The girl opened one eye at that moment and began to laugh. "What is it?" Odd immediately asked her. Your hair. It looks ridiculous." Odd had long blonde hair, which he usually gelled up to have it stick up above his head, sort of like a burning flame. But he realized that at that moment his glamorous hairstyle was a real disaster, all his hair flattened to one side. He must have looked absurd. "Nobody panic. I'll fix everything in a fraction of a second," he responded with a smile. Without even looking for a mirror, he smoothed it back into place with a few precise movements. "Everyone's still asleep," he then said, looking around. Yumi was now completely awake and climbed out of her sleeping bag. She was wearing a sweatshirt and black jeans. Black had always been her favorite color. "Richard's not here," the girl observed. Odd realized that she was right. Their friend's sleeping bag was empty. He glanced at his watch and saw that it was 6 a.m. Where could he have gone so early? He and Yumi looked at each other. They then left the laboratory without a sound. Caddick Academy was littered with clear signs of battle. All parts of the school were covered in broken glass, electrical outlets torn from the walls, doors removed from their hinges, and desks upturned. Odd and Yumi, with Richard and Sissy, the principal's daughter, had raised the alarm the night before. As soon as they had seen the robots coming out from the trees, they had run to warn the others. Professor Hertz had prepared smoke grenades and bombs containing corrosive acid, and the children had fought the machines with anything they could get their hands on: baseball bats and football helmets, bows and arrows, and even a dishcloth and soapy water. Many of the school students were still in a state of shock, and some of the teachers had to take sleeping pills to get to sleep. For Yumi and Odd, however, it was different. They had never seen robots like the ones from last night, but they had immediately noticed the symbol the monsters had engraved on their armor. It was the mark of Xana, the artificial intelligence that dominated Lyoko. It's going to take us a century and a half to fix everything up," commented Yumi as she looked bleakly around her. "Don't tell me you want to waste all your time cleaning the school," Odd responded with a grimace. "We have a much more important mission: defeat the Great Phoenix and free our friends, especially Eva." Yumi couldn't help but smile. Odd was very infatuated with the North American student, and he had been extremely upset to discover that Xana was controlling her body, but obviously he hadn't completely lost hope. The two children left the building and began to look for Richard. They walked through the garden and the park, caressed by a splendid sunrise, and the trees still laden with dew. They quickly checked the student dormitory and a cafeteria, but they found no trace of their friend and decided to try the administrative building. They passed by Professor Hertz's office, which Xana's robots had ravaged, and continued on to the basement. "Do you think Richard is trying to repair the thermostat?" Odd asked Yumi. The girl shrugged, doubtful. "From what I know," she finally responded, "he's studying engineering at university, but I don't get the impression that he's very good at practical stuff." Richard Dupuis was 23 years old, and as a child he had attended Caddick Academy just like them. He had been a student of Professor Hopper and classmates with his daughter, Aelita, except that Aelita and her father had been forced to flee the men in black by virtuating themselves onto Lyoko, and she hadn't continued to grow up, while Richard had become an adult. They found him just outside the boiler room, seeming very worried. "Richard," greeted Odd. "How are you, man?" The young man began, shrugging. "I'm looking for my Palm computer. I can't find it anywhere." "You lost your PDA?" Yumi questioned, frowning with worry. I had it in my pant pocket yesterday, like I always do. When Odd and I cut the power, we were in total darkness here, and so I tried to dig it out to give us some light, and I realized that it wasn't there." "Come on," Odd tried to console him, patting his back. "It can't be that important." "Don't you get it, Odd?" Yumi retorted, fuming. "Xana was really controlling Eva Skinner. That means that he would have seen Professor Hertz's file with the codes in it. According to Jeremy, Richard's Palm computer contains the second part of the code down. So if Xana gets his hands on it..." Richard and Odd looked at her, eyes wide. They hadn't thought about that. But Yumi had. Something or someone, maybe even Professor Hopper in person, had filled the man's palm computer with programming code. Jeremy was the group's resident computer genius, and he was adamant that it was important. "Let's get to work," exclaimed the girl. "We need to find this thing." The calendar on the wall showed that the date was the 4th of June, 1994. Aelita was in her father's journal, the virtual world her friends had named the Mirror, and which contained the 6 final days in the life of Professor Hopper before he disappeared inside Lyoko. At that moment, the girl was seated in the Hermitage living room. It was a very orderly room, with a sofa, a lovely rug, and an elegant library. A mirror on a bookshelf reflected her image, an elf with pink hair. Aelita fiddled with the golden necklace around her neck. She caressed the delicate engraving on the surface with her fingertips. A W and an A, Waldo and Anthea, her parents' names. Just below it, a sailor's knot, symbolizing their internal link. Aelita knew that she was alone. She was a prisoner in the virtual world her father had created as a perfect copy of her past, and she hadn't the slightest idea what to do. Jeremy had almost brought her back to reality, but she had refused. She had chosen to remain here with Xana to try to become his friend again, but she and Xana had then had an argument, and he had left, leaving her here alone. To pass the time, the girl had used the navigation box to go back in time to her father's journal. The mirror recounted a fascinating story. After having fled the military base of Project Carthage and after her mother was kidnapped, her father had sought refuge in Paris under a different name, in order to escape the men in black and continue his experiments in secret. And he had succeeded with the help of a scientist, Major Steinbeck, who had later become Professor Hertz. They had both placed their trust in Walter when he had provided funding and constructed the supercomputer in an abandoned factory not far from the Hermitage or Caddick Academy. But Walter, the father of her friend Ulrich, had betrayed them. He sold her father out to the men in black. Aelita had witnessed the final scene in the journal at least a dozen times. In 1994, to help her father, she had accepted to be the subject of a strange experiment that she remembered absolutely nothing about. Then, the men in black had found them, and everything had shattered in the blink of an eye. The secret agents had opened fire, injuring Aelita, and in order to save her, her father had fled to Lyoko with her in his arms. For the young girl, seeing these scenes again had been a startling surprise. Aelita had lost all her memories to do with these events. Her brain had erased them as if they had never existed. Why? Could this possibly be linked to what her father did to her in 1994? Aelita had no clue. Letting out a long sigh, she went into the kitchen to drink some water. Her hand went straight through the tap as if it were just an optical illusion. The girl smacked her forehead. How stupid! She rummaged through her clothing and found the mirror box. It was blue in color and had a small screen and 3 large red buttons. With the 2 side ones, she could advance and rewind through time in the journal, while the third, labeled Free Exploration, allowed her to move around the virtual world however she liked. But the command box also had another power. By holding it in her hand, she could touch the objects in the world, use them, and even eat and drink. Like this, Aelita finally succeeded in quenching her thirst. Then looked all around the deserted kitchen. She had to do something, find someone, or she would run the risk of going completely crazy. She was tired of being alone, and her friends needed her in the real world.
Interesting. Wait, who's using light mode on Twitch?
Take a wild guess.
I want to see who Dark Xana says. Okay. Yep. All right. Okay. Someone has an echo, and they have 5 seconds to fix it before clicky, kicky. That was interesting, I guess. I'm curious to see where they go with the PDA plot thread.
I know where they go with it. I have mixed feelings, but
because you've read it.
I missed a bit.
I'm officially glad that I just rewrote Eva into a rock lover, like, and not this.
What do you mean?
No, she's a bit bland. I will agree with that. She's a little.
Official artwork shows her being dressed like Edward Elric. In what universe does would you ever associate Edward Elric with? Ugh, that stuff.
Okay, are you talking her Lyoko? Because her Lyoko form is a groupie.
Yeah, that's being redesigned significantly. No, bad, disgusting.
I mean,
no, her design on the covers.
Yes.
Right. Oh, okay. I mean, it's Xana, first off. So he doesn't really give a shit.
And that is why I am
Ava
rewriting.
was like,
yeah, I think I would rather just have that as her usual one, just rewrite her into like, I don't know, like some foil to Sam or something like that. Anything but that. Ugh, and ugh. Makes me sick to his stomach.
I mean, I think Ava being a groupie on Lyoko just takes away from the fantasy element that Lyoko tends to play with in canon.
We've argued with this. I honestly like the idea that Lyoko can be literally whatever.
No, I get. No, I'm just saying, like, my
sworn
only gripe is it doesn't feel fantasy enough.
That's my ultimate gripe. Personally, I would rather just look for something Greek. I would look for something slightly Greek inspired, and like for out of the sirens or harpies or whatever, and use that instead.
I mean, she could have just been like, a female knight or something.
Nah, I think something more tunic based would be better.
Tunic based? Knights wore tunics. Hello, people.
Okay, toga based.
I don't know about that.
Nah.
I mean, you could definitely draw from Greek for fantasy characters. Greek culture for fantasy characters.
Or maybe something from Shakespeare, or maybe something out of Shakespeare's works.
But
I'm probably the only one here that doesn't have an issue with Eva's.
It's not that I have an issue. It's not like I'm like, oh, that's terrible.
I think
it
so.
ruins the book. It's more like, oh, it feels really unoriginal.
It's more original than some of the other designs I've seen in actual fan fiction. So,
I mean, I guess that's probably fair.
But I get what you're saying. It's not.
I know
like
Kolyoko.fr had their. I know Kolyoko.fr did some fan art.
It feels lazy because it's like, instead of coming up with a fantastical character for her to be, she's just her with a groupie with a rock star shirt on. Like, that's it.
Well, she's got makeup on too. She's got like fantastic rock star makeup on.
Let's see, I'm posting in the staff chat at the closest thing I saw to how they drew Eva's design. That one at least seems to meld a bit better with how they interpreted it. It doesn't exactly look like, it doesn't quite match what they have, but
the fuck is with the unicorn?
I know the scene. It's a scene from the book. Yes, it does go there. Yes, really.
The book.
Yes.
Why?
Look, just try to focus on how to. Look, I've been trying to focus on how to use that design form, however I can see it, as a basis to make a better design for her form in GK.
Where the fuck does a unicorn fit into any of this?
I know the answer. I'm not going to tell you though.
Oh my gosh, this fucking first city is on fucking LSD. I swear to God. I swear to Peter Duncan that this entire fucking book is just someone doing LSD and writing it down.
You could say the same for what I write.
No, your stuff has a sensible sort of twistedness to it. Like you don't need drugs to write what you write, Eric, is what I'm saying.
Of course I don't.
You need drugs to write Chronicles.
Really? I thought you just needed to binge on McDonald's and, just while you're in that food coma, you write it.
We do not talk about the unicorn or the big elephant in the room.
I wonder if there. Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't it be funny if there was an elephant?
I'm sorry, there is an elephant in my room. I'm trying to get rid of him, and I'd rather we just not talk about it. Okay. Let's not address him.
Yeah, I still want to.
Bartholomew will be out of the house. Let's just not address him.
I'm still trying to figure out how to get that design like made properly, because the way they drew it, it actually blend in a bit better. But I still don't figure out how. I'm still trying to figure out the proper.
From what I can tell, she's just like a rock star on for like a Christmas tour. That's what she looks like in that.
Honestly, I just go for a bard theme.
You know, a bard would be interesting. Now that I think, maybe that's
that
what
would
she's
probably
supposed to be, but like
with a
more
sort of
modern bard.
Honestly, I just go with
I take it back a little bit. Maybe her design isn't that terrible.
Well, no. The way it's described in the book is shit. The way they drew it is significantly more dignified.
That one episode of SpongeBob where he's a rock. Yes. Or wait, are we talking about the one where he rips his pants? Or cause I'm pretty sure there's like 2 episodes where he becomes a rock star. Oh, the movie scene.
You know, when he became a rock star wizard, and
Goofy
freed everyone from the chum bucket.
Yes.
Yes, Goofy Gooby Rock. Yes, Goofy Gooby Rock.
That is like that's the what would it the chaotic good bard in D&D. That would be the chaotic good.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that this is some kind of modernization of it of sorts. Or minstrel or whatever it is. Because the guitar is like kind of this thing close to kind of like the equivalent of a lute. Plus, I think her power is sound based, so
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the part where she plays with her powers yet.
Of course we haven't.
But yeah, Eva as a character is she's really just there to be a pawn for Xana, and then when she's not being a pawn, she's just kind of there. She's there to be Odd's girlfriend, and that's about it.
Yeah, and this is why I rewrote her into more of a trollish rock star grunge addict in GK, and probably in CLS if I used her there.
Darkzan, I think Wazy's just having some internet issues and some background noise issues and some everything issues. Wazy has a lot of issues he's dealing with right now.
Which does not bode well, since I just wrote him into GK as Professor Tyrone's therapist. BTW, I still don't have a role yet for you, Dylan. Maybe a member of the Destroyers. Maybe Peter Duncan's cellmate. That'll be interesting.
No, I'm the door repairman. What else would I be? I'm the door repairman.
You're the former door repairman, but you went so mad that no one took you seriously. I'm sorry, Dylan.
Actually, no, that's actually very funny. Though, granted, it would probably have to involve Dylan dying in a backstory, but, I could work with that.
You know why I die? I die because someone flipped the door around, and I died trying to fix it.
That actually wouldn't be too... That's actually not too inaccurate. No, that's actually not too inaccurate from what I would have. Basically, someone would be dumb enough to try to open up the door, and then the moment you did it, the specters would throw you into the river, and you would drown to death.
You mean the elevator shaft?
No, I mean the... Never.
What fucking door are we talking? No, the elevator door is the one I have to die to.
Oh, no, you would die to
the...
Fates.
You die to the GK door.
You could say that they were unhinged.
A rec room with you.
Oh.
All right, everybody mute up. It's
time
for
let Weezy rejoin the stream because you kicked him out.
Oh yeah. Wait, no, he hadn't rejoined it since he disconnected.
Oh, that's right. What did you miss, Weezy? We should probably tell you that.
I missed most of chapter 1.
Basically, Odd and Yumi wake up and they talk for a bit.
They're talking about...
Oh my god, Wazy's internet is on fire.
Oh, this is unfortunate. I guess I'll catch him up later when his internet's not on fire.
I apologize.
It is not your fault that you live in a country with shitty ISPs.
It's mostly just recapping stuff from the first book, or the last book, I mean.
Also, Wazy, it's not your fault that we're in America and you're not. Which probably doesn't help.
Alright, I'm gonna mute up now.
Yes, mute up, everybody. That is the order.
Chapter 2. Richard's Palm Computer. Alita knew that she was really inside the same computer that housed her friends on the Yoko. But the mirror was located inside of a sandbox, a sort of virtual space completely isolated in the core of the supercomputer that functioned separately from the rest of the content on the hard drive. By building the mirror, her father had had a stroke of genius. He created it by using the memory-snatching device on himself and Professor Hertz, and the events in their memories were perfectly recreated. Alita had combed the Parisian suburb from one side to the other. She could smell the summer air and hear the buzzing of the mosquitoes, but had managed to find very few people. She could only find the people that her father and Professor Hertz had seen, some only for a few split seconds as they went about their days in 1994. Other than that, the city was empty and desolate. There were no children playing ball in the middle of the street, no workers behind the counters of stores. What a sad place, thought the young girl to herself. But she knew that she would find someone else at Caddick. In the world of the mirror, it was currently more or less 10 o'clock in the morning, and her father, who at this time had been working as a teacher, was surely in class. Alita crossed the Hermitage garden and strolled through the park towards Caddick. The class would be full of people, young boys and girls her age, her old classmates. She could sit on the floor and watch her father, listen to his lesson, have some company. Upon arriving at the science laboratory, Alita discovered that nothing had changed during all these years, except for the computer set up on the desk. The one from 1994 was a large plastic yellow box with an enormous cathode ray tube monitor. Without really understanding why, Alita recognized the computer model. It was a 486, which at the time was the best available. It used a Windows 3.11 operating system from the prehistoric times of computer science. She wondered what Jeremy would say if he saw it. The young girl then turned red thinking of her friend. She hoped with all her heart that he was doing well. Her father was located behind the desk and was in the process of revealing his secrets on BASIC, a programming language. His students were watching him as if he were a Martian. Alita discovered that her father taught passionately, enthusiastic about the new technologies that he was explaining, and yet the Alita from 1994 sat at her desk with an absent-minded and slightly bored look about her. The young girl observed herself for a moment. The Alita of 10 years ago was nearly identical to her current self, but she also seemed quite different, more carefree. Beside her at the same desk sat Richard, who was also 12 years old, and they were joking quietly amongst each other, passing notes back and forth. She would have loved to approach the Alita of 1994 and grab her by the shoulder, telling her to pay attention and listen to the lesson and take advantage of these final moments with her father. But unfortunately, there was nothing she could do. It was nothing more than a recording. Once the class had finished, the students began to leave through the door. Each time that one of them left the room, they disappeared from view in the memories of her father, transforming into smoke and vanishing into thin air, no longer existing. Ultimately, the only ones remaining in the class were her father, Richard, and the Alita of 1994. "Please, my dear," said Hopper, "leave the classroom. I would like to speak for a moment with Richard." The child shrugged her shoulders and rose with a hop, becoming transparent, then invisible like the others before her. Richard approached the professor, while Alita did the same. Did I do something bad, Professor?" the boy asked. Hopper burst out laughing. "Besides not paying attention during my class? Don't worry, you're fine. But, well, I'd like to ask a favor of you." Alita listened more closely. She had never yet explored this part of the journal. It could be important. Her father passed through her without seeing or feeling her, and he led the young Richard towards the computer at the desk. In the middle of the river was an island that connected to the mainland by an iron bridge. The island had a factory on it, a large building made of red bricks and a steel roof with windows on all sides. The factory and bridge had been there for years, rusting bit by bit without anyone paying them any attention, but for several days now the place had been brought back to life, reanimated by the soldiers and workers and their constant coming and going. There wasn't much to see on the outside besides the men who were keeping watch in front of the entrance. The inside, on the other hand, had changed a lot. The suspended walkways that linked the entrance to the ground floor had fallen apart quite some time ago, but new mobile platforms had been installed in their place. Everything had been kept clean, the cement ground was free of debris, and the center of the room contained a large emerald-green nomadic tent. Beside the enormous tent was the elevator that led to the 3 underground floors where Hopper had built the enormous structure of the supercomputer. The 3rd floor, the deepest, housed housed this computer, a tall cylinder covered with golden glyphs that shone in the darkness. On the second level were the scanners that allowed access to the virtual world, and finally, on the first level was the command post from which the entire imposing electronic apparatus could be managed. At the moment, Memory was seated at the controls. The woman seemed to be between 40 and 50 years of age, but the smooth skin of her face and the red cascade of her hair that enveloped her made her appear younger. Over her plain jacket she was wearing a white lab coat, and delicately around her neck sat a simple gold necklace. Several screens full of symbols surrounded the scientist, and in front of her a sphere was levitating in the air, divided into 4 sectors. It was Lyoko, though obviously only its holographic projection. Hannibal Mago approached Memory silently and placed a hand adorned with many rings on her shoulder. "Well?" he asked. Memory turned around in the pivoting chair of the terminal and looked into his predatory eyes without so much as blinking. "I'm really sorry, sir," she replied. "Still nothing." The woman pointed to the palm computer that was connected with a cable to the analysis systems of the console. "I worked all night non-stop with these codes. They're unintelligible." Hannibal Mago clenched his teeth. "Do you know what we've been doing up until now, dear? We conquered a fortress. We conducted a long siege and will need years to fully complete this step. But the factory is now ours, and we have reactivated the supercomputer. And we need to start on phase 2 now at this stage. Consolidate the success. We must use Lyoko to attack the most important centers of power in the world. And we must do it quick, before our enemies manage to organize themselves." "Yes, sir." Mago placed his hand on Memory's shoulder again, but grasped it this time until a pained expression appeared on the woman's face. "I need to know what these codes do. Is it a weapon that could be used against us? Something from our enemies? Or something that could be exploited in our favor?" I don't know, sir." Mago freed his prey, furious. "Did you transmit the data to that creature, Xana?" he asked in a wary tone. "Of course. He's working on them now, but he hasn't responded yet." Hannibal Mago turned to leave. "I'm giving you until 1 in the afternoon," he said over his shoulder in an icy tone. In the mirror, the Professor Hopper and the very young Richard Dupuis were sitting in the lab facing the old teacher's computer, while Alita was perched on the table and carefully listening to them. "Do you know what electronic mail is?" asked the professor. "It's like regular mail," the boy answered him, while nodding his head. "Like you have an address and others can send you letters, except they arrive on the computer instead of the mailman bringing them to you." "Exactly," smiled Hopper. "Good, Richard. Well, I've created an electronic mail address for you." The boy's face lit up with a glorious smile. "For me? An email address?" "Yes. And on top of that, it's a very special address, a secret. I will be the only one able to use it to send you messages. So now, listen carefully. If things go the way I think they will, in the near future, electronic mail will develop a lot more, and you could even have dozens of different addresses. So what I'm asking you is that you'll always remember the one that I've given you, and that you'll never stop checking it from time to time." Hopper passed a small card to Richard, and Alita leaned in to see it better. On it was written, "help-Alita@hopper.com," and a long password. The professor saw the look of worry on the child's face and hurried to give him an explanation. "It's a very unique address. The server, in other words, the computer used to save or transmit messages, is mine. It's located in a safe place and will continue to function even some 50 years from now. See what the address is? Help Alita? You're my daughter's best friend, so if she's ever in danger in the future, maybe even a long time from now, I'll use this email to explain how to help her. Do you promise me you'll use it?" Alita brought her hands to her mouth, stunned. The pieces of the puzzle began to assemble in her mind one after another at the speed of light. Everything must have happened more or less the following way. Richard saved the card from her father and continued to visit the strange email address. When older, he bought a palm computer that he added all his email inboxes to, this one included. It maybe became a sort of habit for him, an automatic action to check his email that he didn't give much thought to anymore. And then, one fine day, Alita discovered the secret room hidden in the Hermitage. There must have been a switch in the wall or something of the sort. Basically, her father's computer had sent out emails automatically that took control of Richard's palm computer. The young man hadn't immediately made the connection between this and the promise that he made to her father 10 years before, or perhaps he thought that it wasn't important, but he was pressed either way to visit the Hermitage to help her. Richard was someone that they could really count on. During this time, Alita remained alone in the science lab. Her father and Richard had left, but that didn't matter now. She was still lost in her thoughts. To be honest, her father had really thought of everything. He knew that things could end badly and that Alita ran the risk of losing her memory, and he prepared a treasure hunt for her, a long series of clues that would lead her to what? She needed to find out. The young girl stood. She knew now what she had to do, find Xana and hope that he would accept to help her. Chapter 3. The Gold Necklace. They all met at around midday in the principal's office. Yumi, Odd, and Richard were seated some distance away from their group of adults, composed of Principal Delmas, Professor Hertz, and the group's parents, Walter Stern, Michael Balpois, the De La Robias, and the Ishiyamas. The adults had woken up later in the morning. Their faces were deeply marked by fatigue and preoccupation, and up until now they hadn't done anything but argue. The Ishiyamas wanted to call the police. The principal wished to evacuate the students. They had to warn someone. They had to... "That's enough!" Odd finally yelled. Everyone turned to look at him. His parents gave him a more serious look, as if to tell him to leave the talking to the grown-ups. But Odd was definitely not the kind of person who let himself be scared by such a thing. "You just don't get it!" he exclaimed. "What do you think calling the police will do against an army of robots that came out of a computer? Well, I'll tell you what they can do. Absolutely nothing. They'll think we've gone crazy. What's more, we're not just talking about some petty criminals, but the Green Phoenix, a terrorist organization with soldiers armed to the teeth and that has now gotten its hands on the most important supercomputer in history. And they can use it to do unthinkable things. Do you really think that the police would be able to help us?" Principal Delmas tried to add his own 2 cents, but Hertz stopped him with a wave of her hand. "The boy is right. Let him speak." Encouraged by this small bit of success, Odd felt more sure of himself. "We're the only ones who really know the enemy and how to confront it. We showed this much last night. If we remain united, we can defend Caddick and even defeat the Green Phoenix and save our friends." Michael Balpois timidly raised a hand. "But we're going to need help." It was Yumi who answered him. "I agree with you on that one. We need to call Dido again, the boss of the Men in Black. They know the Green Phoenix and could help us take them down, but I'm also convinced that we can't take on the monsters of the Yoko in our own reality. We need to fight Xana and the terrorists using the supercomputer's power, but above all, we'll need a scanner to get Aelita, Eva, and Ulrich out of there." Silence fell in the room. Odd saw the adults look at one another out of the corners of their eyes, somewhat perplexed, but ultimately they knew that the children were right. "What do we do, then?" Delmas finally asked. Odd and Yumi smiled. "We need to reinforce guard duty, prepare more corrosive bombs, and check our reserves to see how much time we could resist the siege," the boy listed off. "And Angeli, call Dido and ask her to come right away to give us a hand. And we need to organize a vanguard to get into the Hermitage and take back control of it," Yumi then said in conclusion. "There will be soldiers on watch, so we're going to need to keep our eyes wide open and find out how to take them by surprise." Aelita didn't know where to find Xana. The creature, or rather the part of it that was still trapped in the mirror, had left her there alone. It might even have already found a way to escape this virtual prison. Aelita had searched again and again, scouring the journal from one end to the other, but it was a hopeless mission. There were too many days in different locations, an entire city, and an infinite number of hiding places. The day before, Xana had asked Aelita to help him because he wanted to become a human being. She replied that she didn't know how to do it, and he had become enraged, and the girl had convinced him to come back. She then had an idea. Xana wasn't human. He could take the form of a young boy, but really he was succeeding in integrating with the programming of the virtual world. He may have powers here, the ability to do things the young girl couldn't even imagine. He could be able to hear her. The girl ran out of the school, towards the park, and cupped her hands around her mouth like a megaphone. "Xana!" she yelled at the top of her lungs. "Xana, come here, please! I need to talk to you! I need your help!" The 2nd of June, 1994 was a splendid day. A light breeze drifted between the leaves, bringing with it the lingering soft scent of spring. Aelita could feel the grass give way beneath the soles of her shoes, and the summer air ruffled her hair. The wind suddenly intensified, transforming into a whirlwind of dust and smoke before her eyes, and began to take form. Where there had previously been nothing but air, now stood a boy. His hair was black, he was thin and muscular, and his lips were drawn in a pout of discontent. "Now you ask for my help," he said, "after refusing me yours when I needed it?" Aelita winced. In a sense, she and Xana had grown up together. They had played together in the first city. They had been friends. She didn't remember anything about this time in her life, which had evaporated from her mind like a puff of smoke, but deep down she knew that there was a special connection between the two of them. "I can't promise that you'll become human," she whispered, "because, well, I don't know if it's possible. Such a promise would have been a lie as big as a house, and friends don't lie to each other." "That doesn't mean—" "But it's true. And what's more, what does that mean, become human? Have a body? You already have one here. You can make yourself look like a boy whenever you want. Although that won't be enough, there's also emotions, and the way you behave. That's what makes us truly human." The boy sat down on the grass in the park and rested his head on a closed fist. Aelita sat beside him. In Washington, D.C., it was just after 6 o'clock in the morning and Dita was asleep. Her office had a private bathroom and a dressing room in which she had installed a bed a few years earlier. During urgent times, she preferred not to stray too far from her center of operations, and what was currently happening in France was indeed urgent in every way. The telephone in the adjacent room began to ring. It was the sound of her secure line. Dita leapt out of bed. She was already fully dressed. She paused for a brief moment to run her fingers through her short blonde mane before, feeling completely awake, hurrying to answer. On one of the walls of the office, just above the door, a line of identical clocks were hanging. Beneath each of them was a label showing the name of a different capital city from around the world. The woman reached one of the handsets while glancing at this wall through the corner of her eye. In France, it was not long after midday. "Dito," she said into the receiver. "Lone Wolf reporting in, ma'am," said a tired yet resolute voice on the other end. Dito remained silent as she listened to her agent's brief report. He and his men had followed Hannibal Mago's army to the factory on the small island, where the supercomputer was located. Grigory Nictopoulos had discovered and captured them, tying them up and gagging them before transporting them out of the city. It had taken 4 days to free themselves, find a car, and return to base. 4 days lost. "Tell her we did the best we could," a voice interrupted Lone Wolf's narration in the background. "That Grigory is a real snake." Dito began to drum her fingers on the desk, irritated. Lone Wolf, restrain your men. Have you managed to contact Walter Stern yet?" The agent coughed, ashamed, before continuing. "Yes, ma'am. But, you see, he told us this really confused story, and he wanted us to help him." As she listened to her subordinate, Dito's eyes narrowed to form 2 tiny slits. "Listen to me carefully," she finally exclaimed. "This operation is of the utmost priority. I want Major Steinbeck, in other words, Professor Hertz, to take over. Do whatever she tells you to. There's no time to lose. And one more thing, agent. Go see a dentist." Dito hung up before her agent had time to protest. She knew that Lone Wolf wasn't happy with the idea of going through emergency dental protocol, but she couldn't allow the team to stay out of the game for much longer, given the delicate situation. The woman buried these thoughts and concentrated on dialing another number on her telephone's keypad, Maggie's number. Although it was very early, her secretary responded on the first ring with a cold and efficient tone of voice Dito truly appreciated. "You need me, ma'am?" "Yes, thank you," responded Dito with a smile. "Pack your things and order for a private jet to be prepared. I'll see you at the airport in an hour." "May I ask what our destination is?" asked Maggie without hesitation. "We're going to Paris, in France." She heard Maggie take a few notes on the side. "Very well, ma'am," she then said. "Would you like breakfast on our flight?" Yumi, Odd, and Jim Morales walked along Caddick Academy's main path, heading towards the school's large iron gate. Jim, the sports teacher, was a lot younger than the rest of the teachers, and all the students were on friendly terms with him, treating him more like a larger friend than a teacher. Of a stocky physique, he always wore his hair short, held back from his forehead with a tennis sweatband. He also usually wore a band-aid on his cheek, which, according to him, made him seem tough as leather. But today there were at least 3 band-aids, and not to mention the bandage covering his right ear. That was the only serious injury in the entire school from the battle of the previous night. All the members of the small group were armed, Odd with a compound bow and several arrows, Jim with a baseball bat, and Yumi nunchaku. This Japanese weapon, composed of 2 short batons joined at one end with a chain, belonged to Ulrich, and Yumi's thoughts were on him as she swung the weapon distractedly. Several days earlier, the 2 of them had gone to Brussels, and Ulrich had taken the bull by the horns and given her the famous "You and I are more than just friends" speech. Yumi had felt happy to hear it, but she hadn't given him a response. They had been right in the middle of an urgent situation, with the men in black right on their heels after discovering they'd broken into one of their secret laboratories, and they had needed to get back to Caddick as fast as they could. At that confusing time, she had thought that she would have the chance to reply later, but Ulrich was now trapped in Lyoko, and she couldn't stay calm. "Ugh," Jim sighed from in front of her. "I should be in bed in the infirmary, not here on guard duty." Odd let out a mocking laugh. "I'm terribly sorry, Jimbo," he said. The boy called him by this nickname each time he wanted to make fun of him. "You'll have time to rest later. Now is the time to fight, and you need to set a good example." They were about 100 meters from Caddick's immense gate, resting between 2 brick columns on which the school emblem had been sculpted. "What's that over there?" Yumi asked, noticing yellow and black triangular signs with lightning drawn on them. They were placed on short metal pedestals, just the other side of the rungs of the gate. Further past the signs, they could see scaffolding on the footpath, strips of black and red tape like the ones that usually signal public construction, and dozens of workers with helmets securely attached to their heads. "How could they allow a construction site to open just in front of the school?" huffed Jim, indignant, "and without even asking the principal's permission?" The teacher slightly trotted across the distance separating them from the fence and held out his arms to grasp the bars. "Stop, Jim!" cried Yumi. "Don't touch anything! I get what those signs mean now. High tension!" The teacher stood frozen to the spot, and Odd approached him, pointing out the mess of barbed wire placed all along the top of the fence surrounding Caddick. "Yumi's right, Jimbo. Look, I bet these rotten green Phoenix guys want to—" "What a smart kid." Yumi whipped around. The person who had just spoken was a worker in a yellow high-vis vest and a hard hat, observing them from the top of the gate, but when she looked closely, she could see that this clothing was just a disguise. The man was carrying a gun in his belt, and it was clear that his face was not that of a humble mason. His jaw was square, his eyes icy, and his mouth twisted into an unsettling half-smile. "Well then," Jim exclaimed, taking every precaution to not even brush up against the gate, "would you care to explain what it is you're doing here?" "Your brats have already figured it out," the worker replied impishly. "We've electrified the entire perimeter, and thanks to this fake construction work, we can keep watch here, never letting you out of our sight, all without raising suspicions. Nobody can enter or leave without our say-so. We have the school under our control." Yumi watched the man turn around to return to his acolytes. For a split second, the girl thought about using her nunchaku. Yeah, and then what? She couldn't get through the gate. She couldn't stop the soldiers. She sighed. "Come on, let's go back," she proposed to Jim and I. "There's nothing more we can do here, and we need to warn the others quickly. Nobody can try to climb the fence or touch the bars of the gate." Yumi thought about her little brother. Hiroki had needed to spend the night at a cousin's house, and now their parents would have to call and tell him that they still couldn't see each other. Xanon was separated into two halves. A part of him, the dominant half, no longer had a physical body. From time to time it appeared between the trees or glaciers of Lyoko in the form of a light smoke, but it was almost always invisible and limited itself to studying and processing data. The second half of the artificial intelligence, on the other hand, was trapped in the mirror, and had the appearance of a 13-year-old boy. At this moment he was seated on the lawn of a Cadix park with Alita. Xanon was a very high-level program. He was used to handling dozens of tasks at the same time and could divide himself into a million different fragments if necessary. The fact that he was currently cut in two, shuttled between Lyoko and the mirror, didn't bother him in the least. The problem was something else. The part of him that took the form of a child also began to reason like a child. He let himself be carried away by his emotions, and this was not a good thing. Now, for example, he was wasting his time with Aelita. Why? The simulations of his calculations showed that there was a minute probability of this conversation being useful to him. When Hopper destroyed him, he had needed to reunite his dispersed fragments over the internet and, to regain his strength, had taken control of the mind of a human, Eva Skinner. He may have spent too much time in the brain of that girl. "Did you manage to open a connection between the mirror and Lyoko?" Aelita asked him. Xana threw his head back and laughed. "I didn't need to," he explained. "Your friend Jeremy opened the bridge that separated Lyoko from the first city, and I was able to regain my full strength that way. At first I had trouble communicating with the part of me in Lyoko, but everything has been resolved now." "So," the girl said, "you haven't even tried to get out of here?" Xana tilted his head and narrowed his eyes. That was an interesting question. "Hopper included a security system in the mirror," he explained, concentrating. "In the virtual world we're in now, to interact with objects, you need to have the command box in your hand, but to activate the supercomputer to then enter Lyoko, the Lyoko of 1994, you need to perform lots of operations at the one time. Turn on the supercomputer on the third floor, use the terminal on the first, and, finally, enter the scanner columns on the second underground floor." "And you can't do all that," Aelita said to him, nodding pensively. "On your own." Xana shrugged. "I don't need the box. I can send the instructions directly to the computer controlling the sandbox. But Hopper really studied the system. All those things need to be done at the same moment by 3 different people. The computer identifies me as a single entity, and so you're right. I can't do it. But that doesn't matter to me. I already have everything I need." Aelita became silent, nervous, and began to fiddle with the gold necklace around her neck. "Why is it that every time you become worried," Xana said to her with a smile, "you start playing with the transmitter?" The girl stopped and shook her head. "What transmitter?" Xana stood up. "Poor little humans. They never see any further than the tips of their noses." "That transmitter," he exclaimed. "The one you always wear around your neck." Aelita realized that he was talking about her necklace. "But if that's..." She hesitated. "This is the necklace my father left to me." "It's a transmitter," Xana insisted. "I can sense the circuits inside. It can be used to send a call signal to another identical transmitter." Aelita took her necklace off and began to observe it in the intense light of the sun. "Seriously?" she asked, incredulous. "This has circuits in it? And can you tell me where the other one is?" The boy shook his head. "It doesn't contain a GPS device, so no, I can't localize it, but we can activate it. The signal will be blocked for the mirror, but I can transmit it to the part of me that's inside the Lyoko, and from there into reality." "And what will happen?" Xana was growing tired of so much chit-chat. Plus, it'd be easier just to show her. He approached the girl and took the necklace in between his fingers. It was a flattened circular medallion, about 2 centimeters in diameter. In appearance, it seemed like a massive piece of gold, but Xana was capable of effortlessly seeing how it really worked. He pressed a thumb onto the lower part of the necklace and turned it clockwise until he heard a small click. On the side of the medallion facing him, the letters W and A became illuminated with a faint reddish light. "It's now turned on," he said. Now you just have to press one of the 2 letters, and the corresponding transmitter will begin to project a resplendent light. Do you want to do it? Alita approached him and placed a hand on his shoulder. With a fingertip, she very lightly brushed the letter W. The sailor's knot blinked 3 times, then went back to normal. Santa handed the necklace to the girl and winked. Signal sent, he said.
Well, now my mic went on mute there for a second.
Yep.
This is getting intense.
Yeah. I told you. Once we're in
Wow.
book 4, it just goes on a ride.
So we're doing more LSD now. I gotcha.
I'm just waiting for them to reveal that the truth is Michael Belquad cheated on his wife and is actually also the father of Ulrich Stern, making Ulrich and Jeremy half brothers. I'm just waiting for that.
Wait, no. And then even better, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
But we also find out that Jeremy isn't even Michael's son. But in fact, the son,
No way.
The son, no. The son of his mother and Odd's father. Making Ulrich, Odd, and Jeremy siblings.
Can't believe it. So then when Jeremy marries Alita and Ulrich marries Yumi, they're all gonna be related. Can't believe it.
No, Yumi's gonna be
Wow.
the only one not related to them.
Ooh.
I don't know how we put Alita into there. Did Franz cheat on Anthea? Your rule.
No, I said when Ulrich marries Yumi and Jeremy marries Alita, they'll all be related.
Oh, okay.
So
Never mind, I'm dumb.
Yeah.
Rule 30. I still don't remember that thing I was gonna say. I was gonna say it, and then Dark Xana said something. Yeah, Dark Xana asked me if I felt old, and then I forgot, and now I'm sad because I forgot.
It do be like that.
I still find it interesting that France is just cool with this.
I mean,
He's just vibing.
France or Franz?
Paris, France.
Okay.
The French
I thought you
military.
meant...
The French Navy.
Yeah,
the French
honestly,
Air Force.
the whole situation is probably way over their heads, so like what is a normal cop gonna do with a supercomputer that has the power to warp reality itself?
Yes, but I think there's a point where the French military would say to the politicians, like, guys, you just don't start doing shit. I don't know if you're gonna be politicians for much longer.
There's a very good chance that there's like certain levels of government and the higher tier is actually ordering the lower tier to not get involved. And they're trying to cover this up from the public. Also, where did Eric go?
I think he just left.
Oh. That's too bad. He was giving an interesting take on Chronicles. But he's like me, he's also
Interesting's a good way to put it, I guess.
Yes.
Oh no, we lost Swayze.
Diplomatic word. Interesting.
We lost Swayze.
Crazy's back.
No, I'm back. The connection was getting spotty, so I left and came back, and it looks like it's better now.
No, Dark Xana. It will fly until someone brings religion into it.
The cult of Xana just shows up, and they're like, "We are the new religion."
I am Christ reborn. Friends,
Oh my god.
I have an issue with this.
Oh my god.
Hello, Twitch. Don't ban me. This is a joke.
Yes.
Finally, my Xana, the 13-year-old boy, is just like, yes, finally. My followers have arrived.
Chapter 4.
Also, wait, I feel like I missed something. Why is Xana a 13-year-old boy again?
Because
like half of him is a 13-year-old boy.
Because he used to play with Aelita because Franz wanted him to learn human emotions, and Aelita was a 13-year-old girl, so he turned into a 13-year-old boy to hang out with her better.
I got that part, but why is half of him in the 13-year-old boy form in the present day?
So Xana split himself into two. He possessed Eva and he's possessed Odd. Odd went to the mirror, and then he left Odd in the mirror. I got out of the mirror, but that part of Xana stayed. The other half, which was in Eva, went to the first city. He left Eva in the first city, and he was in the first city, and then Jeremy broke down the barrier, and now he's in all of Lyoko, and he's got access to everything. But
basically, it's the end of season 2 minus Aelita being dead.
Well, no, it's literally Xana split in two right now. That's why half of him's this little boy, and the other half's like the closer to the regular Xana.
No, I meant
they're in contact, but
I meant like what he's doing in Lyoko right now is basically the end of season 2, except Aelita's not dead. Basically he's escaping the supercomputer because.
Except he hasn't.
Well,
he's not escaped from the supercomputer. He's still within.
He activates all the fucking towers on Lyoko before he leaves the supercomputer. That's what I'm talking about.
I know the scene you're talking about, but in Chronicles, there is no leaving the supercomputer. He's stuck in the supercomputer, but he got out of the first city. Part of him's still stuck in the mirror, though. Because remember, this is the Chronicles timeline. Xana never leaves the supercomputer. That whole bit of him escaping to the digital sea and they build the skid to go after him, that doesn't happen in the Chronicles timeline, so
stupid. It's like taking out one of the best parts about Code Lyoko.
Yeah. Again, I think Wheezy he was onto something with his theory that this was just given to some guy who got like the clip notes of the show and then was asked to write something, and then that's what happened.
Now, I need to ask Dark Xana, isn't there a scene where Jeremy and Xana Jeremy point at each other in Xana's kiss? There? Because that scene would work way better. Because that scene would work perfectly as the Spider-Man meme.
I don't think they look at each other, but I don't think they point at each other.
Oh, it'd be so perfect. The Code Lyoko version.
If we want to carry on, we got like 2 more chapters, and then we really don't have a lot to say. I think we're just like, either this is so like we're just numb to the madness, or this is like legitimately interesting.
I think I'm numb to the madness.
Yeah, it's just we've gotten through so much that it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's like
it's less. Go ahead.
It's like never mind.
At the very least, I would equate the experience like watching JoJo. Eventually, all the weird, it's still weird at some point, but you've just gotten used to it and are rolling with the experience by the third season.
It's like when you work retail and the Christmas music just doesn't exist anymore because you've heard it enough. That's what it's like.
All right, I'm gonna mute.
Chapter 4. Parachutists rain on Caddick. Memory had been at work for hours, bent over the command post of the supercomputer. All around her, the first floor of the factory was teeming with activity. Soldiers in uniform for guerrilla warfare were circulating all about, with walkie-talkies crackling away and machinery that constantly roared in the background. On the pivoting platform in the center of the room, the three-dimensional projection of the virtual world of Lyoko still continued to rotate, illuminated with colorful text and labels that appeared and disappeared. But Memory neither saw nor heard a thing, so long as she was concentrated on the mysterious code that was contained in the palm computer. She had finally managed to decipher the first part. It was a complex activation program, with instructions written in Hoppix, the programming language that Professor Hopper had invented to create Lyoko. This man had been a true genius, and Memory felt an instinctive sense of sympathy for him. The real problem was the second part of the code, a series of unconnected and incomprehensible characters and symbols. The woman believed that among them she could see a sly message written in code and had shuffled through all the possibilities, but she wasn't getting anywhere. Whatever this program was, she needed to find out as quickly as possible. Hannibal Mago wouldn't tolerate any failures, and Memory had learned that efficiency was the only way to keep herself safe from his rage. The woman felt her neck trembling. She thought at first that it was only a symptom of fatigue from working out so much. But the trembling continued, slightly intensified. Memory brought her fingers to the necklace that she was wearing and realized that it was the source of the strange sensation. She removed the thin golden chain from the medallion on which a sailor's knot and the letters W and an A were engraved. She just had time to notice that the knot was now blinking and the letter W was illuminated before collapsing on the keyboard unconscious. The first city was floating in the colorless like a cloud carrying blue buildings. It had once been surrounded by a very tall black wall that acted as a firewall that Jeremy had been forced to take down. Now, nothing was separating the children from the infinite abyss that surrounded around them. It provoked a real sense of vertigo. Eva Skinner pointed to a very long, suspended bridge that stood at a terrifying angle, leading away from the city and reaching out to the horizon. "And you want to go there?" she asked. "That'll be a real pain. In my opinion, it would be better if we return to the park, or if you come with me to explore the city." Jeremy and Ulrich exchanged looks. There was no doubt that Eva was very kind, but coexisting with her was becoming more and more difficult. "I already explained it to you before," exclaimed Jeremy. "We can't stay here dawdling around while our friends are in danger. First things first, we need to get to Lyoko on the other side of the bridge. Then we'll see if we find something there." "And why would being over there help you think up some brilliant idea that you couldn't just think up over here?" Eva asked him, looking at him with a defiant smile. "The truth is, you're acting blindly, four-eyed elf." Jeremy raised his nose, humiliated. It wasn't his fault that he took on such a ridiculous form on Lyoko, what with these green stockings and pointed ears. "Eva, we're going to go, but if you prefer, you can stay here. Sooner or later, we'll come back to look for you." "Eva, we're going to go, but if you prefer, you can stay here. Sooner or later, we'll come back to look for you," said Ulrich in a hasty tone of voice. "You can't be serious," protested the young girl, offended. "I forgot," Ulrich started to say, turning to Jeremy and winking. "Remember the hexagonal castle in the middle of the city? Well, at one point, Jeremy and I walked that way, and the bridge lowered, and a ton of robots dressed as medieval knights that seemed pretty evil started to come across. Just in case you encounter any of them, take my word and run as fast as you can." Ulrich took Jeremy by the arm, and they turned together towards the bridge. It was only surrounded by two lowered railings and was suspended above the void. Under their feet was the abyss. They began to walk towards Lyoko, one beside the other. Several seconds later, they heard the steps of the young girl behind them, rushing to catch up to them. Odd was on the large terrace on the top floor of the dormitory. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and the sun looked like a giant pink grapefruit playing hide-and-seek behind the tips of the trees. It was cold out, and the boy was shivering in his coat, but he had no desire to go back inside and join the others. Odd had never been a big fan of school. Okay, to be precise, he loved being with his friends and cracking jokes with all the pretty girls that crossed his path, but he couldn't stand the strictness, all the absurd rules like the one that forbade students from keeping pets, the classes, and the punishments. Throughout the years, he had managed to rack up lots of punishments without paying them too much mind, but things had now gotten worse. His parents were at Caddick, and they were watching him every minute of the day. He was convinced that he had already demonstrated how capable he was during the reunion this morning, but his success had only lasted for about half an hour. The principal and Professor Hertz had then taken control of the situation again and excluded the children. But it wasn't them that had fought against Santa for so long, nor was it them who had finally defeated him, saving the world as well. They hadn't helped Aelita escape from the supercomputer where she had been held prisoner. They hadn't discovered the secret room below the Hermitage. It wasn't fair, not at all. The school was silent all around Odd. Throughout the park meandered patrols of teachers and students, and from the other side of the gate in the fence, Odd could see Hannibal Mago's men seemingly working on their sketchy projects. They had set up large projectors to illuminate the school at all hours of the night and continued to survey the area. The noises of the city reached him as far off, faded echoes. He heard the horns of cars in the main road, the cries of children playing at the neighborhood sports field, the plane. Odd raised his head. There was a plane above him, which was quite strange. Caddick was far enough from the airport that he had never seen them fly above the school before. He wondered if it belonged to the terrorists from Green Phoenix who weren't happy about the school being closed off and were planning to attack it from the air. The boy's suspicions were confirmed only a few seconds later. The plane turned widely in the sky, then opened its enormous metal stomach from which something began to exit. Small black dots falling at high speed. Parachutists! I grabbed his phone to call Yumi. Where are you? He cried. In the courtyard by the cafeteria, the young girl answered. I'm making rounds with Jim and meet up in front of the administration building right away. You have to sound the alert immediately. Men with parachutes from the Green Phoenix are descending on the school. Odd ended the conversation without giving his friend time to respond and ran off. He rushed down the stairway at full speed, sprinted inside the corridor, and leaped through the glass doorway of the dormitory that had been destroyed during the battle and was barely hanging like a broken wing. Instead of continuing down the narrow path, he took a shortcut across the grass without taking his eyes off the sky. The plane had accomplished its mission and was now pulling away towards the horizon, while the small black dots still approached in the twilight. Odd calculated that they would land in the middle of the park, just before the small forest. He sped up even faster, and his whole body crashed into something. He fell to the ground. Ouch! He yelled. I'm the one who should be saying that, exclaimed Principal Dalmas. The boy shook his head and looked all around. Beside the principal, who was enveloped in an elegant camel-colored coat, were the Ishiyamas and his parents, and they were all looking at him with troubled expressions. None of them were armed. What are you waiting for? Cried Odd with a feline-like jump. We need to prepare to fight against those Green Phoenix brutes. Professor Hertz let out a tired smile. Those aren't the terrorists, Odd, she told him slowly. They are the men in black's parachutists. They came to help us. Yumi also arrived at this moment, running at full speed, with Jim following a short distance behind, huffing and puffing. I tried to tell you on the phone, the young girl explained, but you wouldn't listen to me. Odd placed his head on his hand, dispirited. He had built up some hope of proving his worth to the adults in some grandiose fashion, but instead he only managed to make himself look like an idiot. At that instant, 3 agents landed a small distance from them. They undid the parachute cables as quickly as possible and headed towards them confidently, while 6 cases were placed in the ground behind them. I know them, murmured Yumi. They're the same ones that chased Ulrich and I through Brussels. The first agent removed his airsuit, revealing a black suit and tie of the same color. Even though it was almost nighttime, he was wearing sunglasses. He gave a salute to Professor Hertz. Major Steinbeck, I am Agent Lone Wolf, and these agents with me are Ferret and Weasel, at your command. Does this bridge ever end? Ulrich whined. We're almost there, Jeremy replied to his friend with a smile. Eva remained silent, but the annoyance in her eyes spoke more than 1,000 words. All 3 of them were very tired. They hadn't eaten in a long time, and the suspended bridge gave them a terrible feeling of vertigo. Furthermore, Jeremy had another problem on his hands. While he had taken this path before when going from Lyoko to the first city, the boy had used Code Elita to be able to reach a very high precipice. But now, they would need to cross it, heading down to arrive at the core of Lyoko, and he hadn't the slightest idea how to cross such a chasm. Let's figure this out in stages. First one problem, and then another, he thought to himself. For now, we just need to get to our destination. Jeremy! The overbearing voice made him jump in fright. Did you hear that? Said the boy, turning towards his friends. No, what? He answered, Ulrich with an inquisitive look. The voice came back. It entered directly into his ear as if through an earpiece. Do you hear me, Jeremy? I am Hannibal Mago. The boy stopped in his tracks and motioned towards Ulrich to stop. I hear you, he replied, but I can't say that I'm too pleased to speak with you. He heard crazy, rough laughter. Haven't I already told you how much you amuse me, kid? You must have guts if you can be so insolent with me. But don't push your luck. Mago paused briefly before continuing. I'm about to remove you from Lyoko. What? Exclaimed Jeremy. And my friends? They'll remain there. I have no need of them, but you'll need to leave. I have a job for you. Jeremy grit his teeth. He had no intention to help these criminals anymore. You better do what I say, continued the man. Remember what happened the first time we didn't see eye to eye, don't you? Your girlfriend's mother is here with me, and you don't want something bad to happen to her. You would never forgive yourself. Jeremy knew that he had no way to refuse. Even though Anthea was working for the Green Phoenix, she was still Aelita's mother, and he couldn't allow Mago to harm her. Fine then, he said. What do you want me to do? Remember your friend Richard's palm computer? Well, I want you to study its code for me, and I also want you to decipher Hertz's file. Yes, sir, Jeremy muttered reluctantly, though I'm warning you that I'll need to use the— No, Internet, Mago interrupted him. Do you take me for an idiot? The first thing you do is contact your friends at Caddick Academy. So no, but you may use the Lyoko terminal. That seems like more than enough to me. Okay, sighed Jeremy. And now, say goodbye to your little friends. I've already set up the materialization procedure here. The voice evaporated from Jeremy's ear with a final click. Eva and Ulrich looked at him perplexed. As far as they could see, the boy had merely been talking to himself just now. Jeremy summarized the situation for them. They needed to say goodbye. "But you can't leave us here all alone," cried Eva. "Eva's right. We don't know how to reach the core of Lyoko," added Ulrich. Jeremy tried to answer them, but realized that his voice was no longer there. His feet had risen several centimeters above the flat surface of the bridge and were levitating in the air. He closed his eyes. He was about to return to the real world. Chapter 5. Computer Virus. With nightfall, the terrible cold had also returned to Caddick Academy. The boilers still weren't working, and even though the men in black had brought a thermostat with them, they hadn't succeeded in installing it yet, although they had at least managed to fix the generators. Odd, Yumi, and Richard were squatting outside the short lunchroom building, electric lights shining behind them. "Everything isn't fair," grumbled Odd as he wrapped himself up in his jacket. "We're the protagonists of this story. We did everything up until now, all by ourselves, and we made it out fine. And this is what happens when we add parents and teachers into the mix. They think they know everything." "Yeah," Yumi admitted. "They didn't even let us participate in their meeting tonight." Odd glanced at Richard out of the corner of his eye, listening to them completely enveloped in his large coat. He was the only one that had been allowed into the principal's office. It was absurd. Richard had always remained on the sidelines until now, and all just because he was 23. "Can you tell us what Professor Hertz and the men in black decided?" Richard shrugged. His freckled nose emerged from the upturned collar of his coat. "Well," he responded, "they agreed to act tonight. When the students are asleep, Hertz, Walter Stern, and the 3 agents will infiltrate the Hermitage. Your parents will be with them too, Yumi, as well as Jeremy's father, who's going to help Hertz activate the scanner. The objective is to get Aelita out of the mirror and free the others from Lyoko." "What's their plan? They can't leave the school, and it's obvious that they can't attack the barrier separating the house from the school." "They're going underground," explained Richard, "through the sewers." "But we flooded them." "Precisely," the boy said, shrugging again. "The men in black brought a stack of diving equipment. They've practically thought of everything." At that moment, I would have loved to be able to talk to Jeremy. His friend's brain was like a magician's top hat, always bursting with fantastic plans and ingenious ideas. But now, however, he was alone, or rather, he was with Richard and Yumi. They were going to have to cope. "They thought of everything, but they didn't know how many people would go on the mission." "They thought of everything, but they didn't know how many people would go on the mission with them," Yumi reflected. "I mean, they probably brought spare equipment. We could steal it from them and then follow them through the sewers and get to the Hermitage ourselves." Odd observed Yumi with sincere admiration. Now that was a real fantastic idea. They could join the adults' expedition, giving an important contribution to the fight against the Green Phoenix. They just had one problem. "None of us know how to use the oxygen canisters and all those frogman things," he observed. Richard then decided to respond. "Well, you see, actually... Yes? I'm a scuba diving instructor. It's my favorite pastime." Surprise, Odd looked at the young man from head to toe. A smile then began to spread across his face. Xana was seated on the sofa in the Hermitage's living room. Aelita was snuggled beside him, the mirror command box in one hand and a steaming hot cup of tea in the other. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing," the girl replied. "I'm just a little sad." Her father was dead and her mother had been kidnapped when she was very little, but the message her father had left, as well as the necklace he had left to her, gave her hope that Anthea may still be alive. And when Xana had revealed that the medallion was actually a transmitter, Aelita had felt a small, fragile spark of hope light in her chest. She may be able to get in contact with her. But unfortunately, nothing had happened. Her mother hadn't responded and Aelita's necklace was now dim again. "Maybe my mother is dead too," she thought. "Maybe I really have been left all alone." At that moment, Xana closed his eyes. "Incoming communication," he murmured. "I think it's your friend Jeremy." Aelita leapt up. "Jeremy? But where?" "He's not here. He's at Lyoko's command post, in the old factory. Can I also participate in the conversation? I just need to enter the data flux. It's child's play." Aelita nodded and immediately heard Jeremy's voice in her ear. "Psst, Aelita, can you hear me?" "Jeremy!" cried the girl. "What?" "I need to act fast. It's the middle of the night here and they've left me alone for a minute for the changing the guard, but they'll be here soon." The children quickly updated each other on their respective adventures. Aelita discovered the latest news. Grigory had kidnapped Jeremy and forced him to enter Lyoko, and then come out again to decrypt the codes in Hertz's dossier and Richard's palm computer. She told him everything that she had discovered in the mirror and about the transmitter necklace. "Yes," Jeremy whispered. "Well, you see..." Aelita sensed hesitation in her friend's voice. "See what?" Nothing. I'll tell you another time. Maybe. I just wanted to say hi to you, see if you're doing okay, and tell you that one way or another I will get you out of there." Xana, who had been listening in silence, decided to intervene at this moment. "So Mago has charged you with the task of decrypting the codes. What do you need to do? Activate the code down?" Aelita remembered when Professor Hertz had spoken about the code down. Eva had been present at the time, and Xana had been possessing her. It was obvious he knew everything. According to Hertz, the Code Down was a very powerful program, capable of permanently destroying the world of Lyoko, deactivating the supercomputer definitely. Could Jeremy be intent on using it? You're an ally of the Green Phoenix, Jeremy retorted in an icy tone. You shouldn't be afraid of them. It's true that part of me is associated with the terrorists, Xana confessed to Alita, but I'm unfaithful. I don't trust anybody. Hannibal Mago promised to help me become human, and in exchange for the moment, I have offered him my collaboration. Alita heard Jeremy burst out laughing. Is that what he told you? Mago's nothing but a liar. He lied to you, just like the others. He's not capable of making you human. Nobody's capable of it. Professor Hopper was making progress, Xana protested. I was learning to be like you, but then something happened. Exactly, affirmed Jeremy. And I can tell you exactly what happened. You were infected by a virus. Xana balled his fists. That brat! How dare he treat him this way? He was the lord and master of the virtual world. He was the most complex artificial intelligence man had ever constructed. I found out while studying the First City, explained Jeremy. Hopper created you. He gave you life, you could say, so that in the future you could become the digital equivalent of a human being. That's why Alita went to see you in the First City, to teach you the mystery of human emotions. Alita trusted you and her father. However, he hadn't taken the castle into account. Hopper had activated the firewall, the huge black wall, to isolate the castle and protect it. But he forgot that you were also inside the firewall, and that as a consequence your program codes weren't protected. And to top it all off, you were still growing. You were still just you were just like a child, and your interior barriers weren't yet completely formed. In the end, I think the castle infected you, and gave you much greater powers than Hopper originally had in mind for you. But there was a price to pay in exchange. You forgot Alita. You forgot everything except the core of your computer. I haven't been able to access your code, and so I don't have mathematical certainty. But I'm sure that's what happened. Alita's teachings and her friendship left their mark in you, and when you lost them, you felt a void that you tried to fill, in the wrong way, trying to fight against Hopper and blocking out all emotions except for one, hate. Xana felt himself boil with rage. It was a red and brilliant energy that coursed through his child body. He wanted to take the energy from his main entity to disintegrate the mirror and erase this reality forever. Could Jeremy possibly be right? All these problems, this constant fighting with himself, was it all because of a simple computer virus? How did you find out? He asked. Jeremy cleared his throat. I already told you, by studying the First City's operational code. Plus, I linked together all the clues we've found so far in my head. If you think about it for a moment, it all fits. Xana didn't know how to respond. Alita placed a hand on his shoulder. She gave him a smile, warm and friendly. Is there a way to eradicate the virus? Xana then asked. I don't know, Jeremy responded. I don't have access to your program codes. But I have them, exclaimed Xana. I can run an auto-analysis program myself to identify the... Alita slowly shook her head. That's not how humans deal with their problems, she whispered. If you've forgotten your emotions, you can still find them again. And learn to trust your friends. That's what we do. If you'd like, I can give you a hand. Yumi slithered quietly between the shadows in the park, stepping lightly. Here and there she could see lanterns bobbing and swinging in the darkness, footsteps from people on rounds, but she was dressed in black and knew that they wouldn't see her. She continued towards the gymnasium, where the men in black had hidden the crates with all the equipment. In her pocket she had a small piece of paper with a list of things she needed to acquire. I would have given an arm and a leg to be able to join her on this mission, but Yumi had insisted on going alone. She reached one of the bushes on the border of the park. Before her stood the gymnasium, a low and wide building with a large front door that faced towards her. The windows on the sides of the small building were dark. There was someone in front of the large door. Lone Wolf had left one of the agents behind to keep watch. The gymnasium had no other entries, and the windows were closed, but the girl wouldn't be discouraged. She continued to move between the trees, protected by the shadows of the night, skirting the building. She burst out of the bushes and glued her back to the wall like a suction cup. She then began to move silently towards the man. She heard him speaking on the telephone. Yes, Mom. No, but I can't wear a wool jacket. We need to wear scuba suits. Yes, okay, all right. Yumi covered her mouth with her hand to stop herself from laughing. She recognized the voice. It was Ferret, the secret agent that talked somewhat strangely. It would be easy for her to outwit him. Cautiously, Yumi stuck her head around the corner of the wall to take a look. The large door was open, held there by an upside-down lantern on the floor to stop it from closing. No sound could be heard from inside the gymnasium. There must have been nobody in there. At that moment, the man had his back facing her and was holding his phone to his ear, continuing to talk to his mother. Yumi rummaged in her jacket pocket and removed one of the 2 firecrackers that had come directly from Odd's secret reserve for vandalism. She lit the first one with a lighter, threw it so it would land 10 meters from Ferret, and waited. The explosion came a few seconds later, breaking the night's tranquility. Who did that? Yelled the agent in a piercing voice. He then dug into his black vest to take out his gun. Yumi lit the second firecracker and threw it further away. Another explosion. Who goes there? Ferret shouted as he ran towards where the firecracker had exploded. Hands in the air, or I'll shoot! Yumi seized the opportunity to dash between the shadows behind him. She slipped through the open door, took the lantern off the ground, and closed the door behind her. She made it. The gymnasium was empty. The girl used the lantern to illuminate the enormous space. She saw the still green linoleum floor, the posts, the nets, and the asymmetric parallel bars for climbing. She then spotted several crates in the corner. On the cover of each she saw a label revealing its contents. Weapons, climbing, explosives. Finally, Yumi found the underwater exploration crate. Yumi took the list Richard had written out of her pocket. She never would have imagined they'd need so many things to go diving. She needed to get masks and wetsuits, flippers, weights, and self-draining adjustable hydrostatic jackets. And then there were air tanks, of course, and not to mention the dispensing valves, pressure gauges, and depth gauges. Richard had tried to explain to her what each of these things looked like. Yumi threw the lids off the crates and scanned their contents. Everything was much different from what she'd imagined. To start, the masks weren't like the ones she'd always seen in movies. They covered the whole face and seemed imposing and menacing. And then the air tanks, which, instead of being oblong in shape, were celestial blue backpacks coated in plastic. The girl had checked the sizes and found a pair of adequate wetsuits for Odd and herself, and another larger one for Richard. She then looked for the rest of the equipment, and, figuring she might as well, also took 3 knives and underwater lanterns. She heard Ferret bash his fist against the door. "What a stupid prank! And now I'm stuck outside, and I'm going to have to call Lone Wolf!" She hadn't much time left. Yumi arranged the contents of the crates so as to cover up the absence of the equipment she'd taken, and then began to take her haul into the storeroom. The girl needed to make 3 trips to transport everything. The diving equipment weighed a ton. Once she was done, she keylocked the storeroom and sent a message to Odd's phone. Oh, it looks like we finished. Poor timing on my part. I stepped away for a second.
Yeah, I was wondering as well.
It's just getting crazier.
Yeah.
Scuba gear now?
We're just...
Like, I get it if it fucking gives it away on the cover, but like...
Actually, on the cover, you see Jeremy and Yumi, but we know in the book it's going to be Odd and Yumi, not Jeremy and Yumi.
They both wanted... Jeremy's on every cover, right?
Yeah,
because he's the one telling the books, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I know, but still. But also, I feel like they just didn't want to draw Odd. Because, like, in that art style...
Odd's on the cover.
I would have liked to see it.
Yeah.
Where?
The arm.
Oh, is that Yumi?
Yeah.
Wait, who the fuck?
Yeah.
No. Who the heck is on the ladder? That's Yumi?
I think that's Richard.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't look like...
Could be anybody.
They look like they have long hair. Or, like...
No, he's wearing
They're wearing
hood.
the mask. Yeah.
I thought that was. Why did I think that was odd?
They just didn't want to draw odd in that art style, so they didn't. Like, you don't have to mess with the hair. You just don't draw him. So...
Can't beat that logic.
They don't draw Ulrich either, and that's disappointing.
Yeah.
They do have pictures of him in the in between. They have a bunch of
But
pictures.
we don't have those. You should have just recorded you swishing through the in-betweens for like the after show. And I can just
I can do that for later session.
Yeah,
if you want, we can go through all that.
Yeah, because we can just I can just set that running at the end of the stream. During the after show when we.
Would it be like I could even just take pictures and.
No, I think
I could just record it and just flip through like every 10 seconds.
Yeah, but because having it like a flip book would be way better than.
I skipped over it because it's like how do I read this? Like some of it you can read, but in some of it's just like it's all over the place. So. Yeah, I can definitely flip through the images that we're skipping over.
Oh, good.
And we get to. I mean, I know we had a good reaction to the first book with the picture of Mr. Puck.
Yeah, that was something.
That's so. I get.
Really
I sort of get like, yeah, you'd have to pay someone to custom make an actual Mr. Puck and then take a picture of it. But like, come on, it's gonna cost you like $200. It's gonna be like a $200 commission. You sell like 5 books, and there's the commission back. I'm like, come on.
Not Moonscoop didn't have the money back then. Moonscoop didn't have the money back then. You needed to make cuts somewhere.
They could have. They could have just had Mr. Puck. They could have made him as a prop for fucking Evolution. Had him in the background, and boom, there. You're taking the cost of this Mr. Puck plush and spreading it out.
Also, if I'm not mistaken, it would have been too early for them to be like making props and stuff. I think at this point, Evolution was still reloaded and was still, So that was pre-production.
Yeah,
that's not even.
Oh, I agree, Alexander. I would totally buy a Mr. Puck plush. Absolutely.
Yeah, same.
We all would.
I will bet your money you could find someone on Etsy. Yep. I would bet money that you could find someone on Etsy who can make it. And would make it. I don't know. I don't think I don't really need a Mr. Puck plush.
I don't have that much Seal merch, okay? I want a Mr. Puck. I also want a Kinkerlot plushie, but that's a whole other matter.
Kinkerlot? Yeah, I could go for a Kinkerlot plushie. I can. That would be okay. I could go for the Yumi and Ulrich will they won't they plushie combo. 2 plushes with a voice box, and when you have them talk to each other, they'd have a fight.
God.
Oh, it'd be beautiful.
Watch ship war happen right in the comfort of your living room.
Wrote that Wazy for a moment. I'm like, why the fuck is Cam saying that?
Oh,
Colossus plushie, but like
2.5 meters. Ooh, that's big. Like not as big as the actual Colossus, but that would be a big boy.
That's like 4 inches.
Yeah,
that would be like.
I just imagine if CL actually had a budget and like they had money to spend on a premiere day, that would be like the thing you'd walk into the theater and you'd see like a model, like a tall model of the Colossus just standing over you.
That was a thing for Evolution. Like they had a premiere day.
They did. But I mean, like, if they actually had the money to, like, commission props for, like, a premiere day,
Yeah, I got it.
Like they had money to like rent out a theater for like a day and like invite a bunch of people over.
Roxana, a
but
true size Colossus would. No.
no,
Do you have any idea how big the
maybe you could do like a balloon. You could do like one of those float parade balloons that's like
Colossus is, I think,
Colossus at the Macy's Day Parade.
that still wouldn't even be real size. Like the actual size of the Colossus is fucking insane. It's taller than a tower, and we've already established towers are really fucking tall.
Yeah.
So
just imagine Macy's Day Parade Colossus. The kid's like, what? What's that, mommy?
What is that eldritch abomination?
it is our salvation. The guide who shall bring us to Peter Duncan when we pass.
Oh, the Napskid prop. That just reminds me I think there was like a CL playground at one point. Like
Futuroscope theme park. That was a thing.
Like it was an amusement park.
Yeah. It was part of the Futuroscope amusement park and theme park, and it was like, they made this big thing about, oh yeah, we have this Code Lyoko themed thing, and I always wanted to go to it as a kid. I don't think it exists anymore.
I feel like it was very short-lived.
Yeah, it was.
I honestly, if you're gonna do like an amusement, I feel like CL would be weird to do as an amusement park ride.
CL would make. I think if you want to do things with CL, it's not an amusement park thing. It's more like VR experience.
Yeah, VR makes sense.
Yeah.
But then again, I can totally imagine, like, if Moonscope commissioned it anyway, it'd be like a whole event where you walk into a theater and it's just some, like, professor guys talk about the latest in technology, and then a Xana attack happens. Wow. And you just hear the voice actors say their lines, like, oh no, we gotta take out the thing while Alita goes to deactivate the tower or something like that. And then after that said and happened, there's, like, a rewind in time. Like, there's a big flash of light. And it's just, like, back to normal. Like, Return to the Past now. I can see it. Like, it would be weird still, but I feel like it'd be, I don't know, interesting.
It would be.
Guys, no. How you do a Lyoko theme park is you guys remember Code Lyoko Evolution Episode 1, Xana 2.0, Lyoko Land. You have the Ghost Overboard. What was it that he said? The Ghost Overboard? I'm not sure how that would work, but no, it was haunted.
Lyoko's
haunted.
Lyoko's cool and all, but I don't know if I'd actually want to visit it in person because it's way too easy to fall in the digital sea. So
yeah. Nah, Code Lyoko is a show. As a kid, like, okay, if we're talking, like, actually, like, being in the show, like, Code Lyoko as a kid was a show that I'm like, yeah, I'd like to be in that show, but now as an adult, I'm like, oh god, no.
Hold up, guys. Flower, didn't you say the Hermitage is, like, right next to Caddick?
That's Chronicles, yeah.
In Chronicles. And what the fuck is this map on the cover?
I don't know.
That's not right next to each other.
Well, you can really, all it said is it's not too far from it, and, like, they're not neighbors, but you could still see the school from the windows of the attic. That's really what's been confirmed. Like, they're close.
I don't know.
No, wait, look. You see, they're not that far. Huh. You know what probably happened?
There's a lot of blocks.
They probably took, like, the original show's map and put it in there without thinking about how it conflicts with their own.
That's not the original show's map.
Then what is this map?
I don't fucking know.
I'm sorry.
In the canon, that you can see the school from the Hermitage. So maybe
in what canon? It's not in. You mean in the Chronicles canon? Okay,
Chronicles
yeah,
canon.
yeah.
Yes.
I don't know.
See, that might be another reason why I'm not showing the images. Because I think we'd all get head hurty if we really think about it too much.
Nitpicking.
I think I've had enough Chronicles for today. I think we need to end the stream.
Yeah.
Okay. Fucking damn.
We didn't really even talk about the contents too much of what happened.
I have nothing. I have nothing.
We're just going with the motions. It's there, it's happening, and it's just like, okay. Like, I'm not going to talk about why the sewer is flooded. It's just like, okay. Like,
oh no, that got explained last book. They blew up the wall from the river to try and keep the Green Phoenix out. So they couldn't use the sewers to like attack the school. But now they want to invade the Hermitage, and now they're using scuba suits to get in. And yep, that's the plot.
See, and that's ridiculous. So it's just it's getting weird.
All right, thank you for joining us today, everybody. Does anyone have an art streamer or a musician we want to? I did not mean to do that.
Whoops.
That was... I don't even know how I did that. Okay. That was a really shitty... That was a really poorly... That was... I don't fucking know. Is
he banned?
No, he's not.
Oh.
He's on timeout.
He just got timed out. I untimed him out.
Yeah.
Let's see, I asked, did anyone have an art streamer that they'd like us to raid? Or it is. I mean, Dark Xana, you already show up to my streams and not follow, so war has already been declared. This is just me escalating it.
Can't believe it.
Alright.
Fight.
No suggestions? I thought I've suffered enough to earn it, but okay. No suggestions? Alright, well then we will be back tomorrow for session 11 and the next 6 chapters of Chronicles. I don't fucking know. Don't forget to take your headache medications, and if you got some, be sure to smoke it. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.